The Golden Door nightclub in Chicago glowed like a jewel box on the night of March 15th, 1957. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables draped in white linen. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, expensive perfume, and the kind of money that didn't need to announce itself. This was a place where Chicago's elite came to see and be seen, where politicians sat 3 tables away from mobsters, where everyone pretended not to notice who was really running the city. Tonight, the Golden Door had Dean Martin. Not the Rat Pack Dean. Not yet. This was Dean before Vegas became his kingdom, before the movies made him a household name. But he was already something special, already dangerous in his own way. Dangerous because he was funny. Dangerous because he didn't seem to fear anyone. Dangerous because he'd built his reputation on saying what everyone else was thinking, but was too scared to say out loud. The crowd was dressed to the nines. Men in sharp suits and fedoras. Women in evening gowns that cost more than most people made in a year. Waiters moved between tables with practiced precision, delivering champagne and whiskey, lobster, and filet mignon. The band played soft jazz between acts, creating an atmosphere of sophisticated elegance. But underneath that elegance, underneath that veneer of civilization, everyone in the room knew the truth. This wasn't just a nightclub. This was neutral ground. This was where deals were made, where territories were negotiated, where the real power brokers of Chicago came to conduct business under the guise of entertainment. At a corner table, partially obscured by shadows and cigar smoke, sat Al Capone. He was older now than the young mobster who'd terrorized Chicago during Prohibition, but no less dangerous. His face showed the years, the battles, the life he'd lived. And across his left cheek, running from just below his ear to the corner of his mouth, was the scar. 3 parallel lines. The mark that had earned him the nickname Scarface, though no one with any sense called him that to his face. The scar had a story. Everyone knew the story. Back in 1917, when Al was just a young punk working as a bartender and bouncer at the Harvard Inn in Brooklyn, he'd made a mistake. He'd insulted a woman, told her she had a nice ass, not knowing she was the sister of Frank Galluccio, a small-time hood with a quick temper and a knife. Galluccio had slashed Capone's face 3 times, deep cuts that should have killed him, but instead just marked him forever. The scar was a reminder that even Al Capone had once been young and stupid, a reminder that he'd survived, a reminder that he carried his mistakes on his face for everyone to see. Capone hated the scar. He'd tried to hide it, growing his hair longer on that side, positioning himself in photographs to minimize its appearance, even consulting with plastic surgeons before deciding the procedures were too risky. The scar was his weakness, his vulnerability, the one thing that bothered him about his appearance. And everyone who knew him knew never to mention it, never to look at it too long, never, under any circumstances, to make it the subject of humor. Dean Martin didn't know this. Or rather, he knew it, but he didn't understand it. Didn't understand the weight of that knowledge. Didn't understand that some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. Dean's world, where everyone was fair game. Dean Martin had been born Dino Paul Crocetti in Steubenville, Ohio, the son of Italian immigrants who'd come to America looking for something better. He'd grown up rough, grown up working in a steel mill, grown up knowing poverty and struggle. But somewhere along the way, he discovered he had a gift. He could make people laugh. Not just polite laughter, but real, gut-busting, tears streaming down your face laughter. And he could sing. His voice was smooth as aged whiskey, effortless and warm. By 1957, Dean had conquered nightclubs across the country. He'd worked with Jerry Lewis in a comedy partnership that had made them both stars before they'd split. He'd learned that audiences loved performers who seemed completely at ease, completely unafraid, completely in control. Dean's stage persona was a man who found everything amusing, who could crack wise about anyone, who treated presidents and gangsters, movie stars and politicians all the same because, to him, they were all just people, just material. This approach had served him well. He'd roasted Frank Sinatra. He'd made jokes about Marilyn Monroe. He'd ribbed politicians and cops and priests. Nobody was off limits. Nobody was sacred. And audiences loved it because it felt dangerous. It felt like Dean was taking risks, like he was speaking truth to power, like he was the one guy in a room who wasn't intimidated by anyone. The problem was, Dean had started to believe his own press, had started to believe that his untouchability was real, that his charm and humor could disarm anyone, that the rules that applied to other people didn't apply to him because he was Dean Martin, because he was funny, because people loved him. He'd forgotten, or maybe never fully understood, that some people don't care if you're funny. Some people don't care if you're charming. Some people only care about respect. And disrespect to them is a debt that must be paid. Tonight, Dean was riding high. The first half of his set had killed. He'd done his impression of a drunk trying to order at a bar. He'd sung That's Amore and had the whole room singing along. He'd told jokes about his ex-wife, about his gambling debts, about his drinking. The crowd was eating out of his hand. He was in that zone that every performer lives for, where every line lands, where every pause gets a laugh, where you feel invincible. He scanned the room between songs, making eye contact, pointing at people, incorporating the audience into his act. That's when he saw Capone. The mobster was sitting with 4 other men, all of them in expensive suits, all of them with the hard eyes of men who'd done things they'd never talk about. Capone was smoking a cigar, watching Dean with an expression that wasn't quite amusement, more like assessment, like he was trying to decide if Dean was entertaining or irritating. Dean's mind started working. Capone. Al Capone was in his audience. This was material. This was gold. He could work with this. The crowd would love it. Imagine Dean Martin roasting Al Capone. Nobody had the guts to do that. Nobody would dare. Which meant if Dean did it, if he pulled it off, it would be legendary. It would be the story everyone told about the night they saw Dean Martin perform. The night he was so fearless, so brilliant, that he made jokes about the most dangerous man in Chicago. He should have stopped himself. Should have remembered the old rule of comedy. Know your audience. Should have recognized that there's a difference between roasting someone who understands a game and insulting someone who doesn't play games. Should have seen the warning signs in Capone's face, in the way his companions were watching Dean a little too closely, in the tension that had entered the room even though most people didn't consciously realize it yet. But Dean was Dean, and Dean was fearless, and Dean was about to make the biggest mistake of his career. The scar, Capone's hidden wound. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what that scar meant to Al Capone. It wasn't just a physical mark. It was a symbol of everything he'd overcome and everything he still feared. Capone had built an empire through brutality and intelligence. He'd survived gang wars, federal investigations, assassination attempts. He'd become one of the most powerful men in America, someone who controlled politicians and police chiefs, who ran Chicago like it was his personal kingdom. But the scar remained, a permanent reminder of the night a nobody with a knife had marked him, a reminder that he'd once been vulnerable, that he could be hurt, that beneath the power and the money and the fear he inspired, he was still just a man with flesh that could be cut. Capone had killed men for less than mentioning the scar. There were stories, whispered stories, of guys who'd made the mistake of asking where he got it, or worse, making jokes about Scarface. Those men had disappeared. Some of them turned up in the Chicago River, wearing concrete shoes. Others were never found at all. The message was clear. You could do business with Al Capone. You could drink with him, laugh at his jokes, even negotiate with him if you had something you wanted. But you never, ever mentioned the scar. The problem was, most people didn't know these stories. The general public knew Capone as a legendary figure from the Prohibition era, a mobster who'd been sent to prison for tax evasion, and then released when his health failed. They knew about his power, his reputation, his nickname, but they didn't know the intimate details of what set him off. They didn't know his triggers. They didn't know that beneath the sophisticated exterior, beneath the expensive suits and the veneer of respectability he'd tried to build, Capone was still the street fighter from Brooklyn who'd learned that respect was everything and disrespect was a mortal offense. Capone had come to the Golden Door that night for business. He was meeting with representatives from New York, working out territories, smoothing over disputes. The entertainment was supposed to be a pleasant diversion, background noise while deals were made. He wasn't there to be the show. He wasn't there to be material for some comedian's act. He was there to conduct business. and he expected the same respect he'd always demanded. Sitting next to Capone was Lucky Luciano, the man who'd helped organize the National Crime Syndicate, who'd survive his own assassination attempt and come back stronger. Luciano knew Dean Martin, had seen him perform in New York, had even chatted with him once or twice. He liked Dean, thought he was talented. But sitting there, watching Dean scan the room, watching the calculation in the comedian's eyes, Luciano felt a prickle of unease. He knew that look. It was the look of a performer who just spotted his next bit. And Luciano knew with a sick certainty that Dean was about to do something stupid. The joke that changed everything. Dean stepped up to the microphone. He took a sip from a glass of whiskey that was always part of his act, whether it was real or just ginger ale nobody but Dean knew. He smiled out at the audience, that easy, charming smile that had made him famous. And he spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some very distinguished guests here tonight. Real celebrities. Important people. He paused for effect. In fact, I see Mr. Al Capone is here. Al, stand up, let everyone see you. The room went quiet. Not the good kind of quiet that comes before a punchline. The bad kind. The kind where everyone's holding their breath. Capone didn't stand. He just stared at Dean, his face unreadable. Smoke curled from a cigar. Dean pressed on. He was committed now. Can't back down in the middle of a bit. Come on, Al, don't be shy. I promise I'll keep the jokes clean. Well, mostly clean. A few nervous laughs from the audience. Though I gotta say, Al, I've been meaning to ask you something. That cologne you're wearing tonight, is it called Scarface? The laugh Dean expected didn't come. Instead, there was a collective inhale. The entire room seemed to suck in air at once. Even the band stopped playing, the last notes of their song dying in the sudden silence. No, not a cologne guy. That's okay. Dean was improvising now, trying to land a bit, trying to get the laugh that would justify what he just said. Seriously though, Al, between you and me, you should tell people you got that scar in a knife fight defending a widow and her children. Much better story than the real one, right? More romantic. Women love a hero. Although, Dean paused, going for the big laugh. I guess I insulted a guy's sister and got my face sliced. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it, does it? That's when it happened. Capone stood up, slowly, deliberately. His eyes never left Dean's face. The four men at his table stood with him, their hands moving inside their jackets. But Capone waved them off with a subtle gesture. This wasn't a job for them. This was personal. From beneath the table, Capone pulled out a baseball bat, not metaphorical. An actual Louisville slugger, dark wood, well used. The same bat that had become his signature weapon. The tool he'd used to make examples of people who betrayed him, who disrespected him, who forgot their place. The bat that had ended lives and careers. The bat that meant you'd cross a line you couldn't uncross. The glamorous atmosphere of the Golden Door vanished in an instant. The elegant nightclub transformed into something else, something primal and dangerous. Women gasped. Men pushed their chairs back, ready to bolt. The waiters froze in place, trying to become invisible. And Dean Martin, the fearless comedian, the man who made a career out of saying whatever he wanted, stood on that stage and realized he made a terrible, possibly fatal mistake. The bat and the walk. Al Capone didn't rush. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. He just started walking toward the stage, the bat resting on his shoulder like a man heading out for a casual game of ball. But there was nothing casual about this. Every step Capone took was measured, purposeful. Every eye in the room was on him. Every person in that nightclub understood that they were about to witness something that would either become a legendary story or a tragedy they'd be questioned about by police. Dean's mouth went dry. His legendary composure, the ease that had made him a star, evaporated. He'd crossed paths with tough guys before. He'd performed in mob clubs. He'd even borrowed money from loan sharks when times were tight. But he'd never, not once, felt the kind of raw, murderous intent that was radiating from Capone as the mobster approached the stage. Mr. Capone, Dean started, his voice lacking its usual confidence. You were just what? Capone's voice cut through the silence like a blade. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. You were just what, Dean? Making jokes? Having fun? Entertaining the people? He was at the edge of the stage now, looking up at Dean with eyes that had seen things, done things, that Dean couldn't imagine. You think my scar is funny, Dean? You think it's material for your act? Dean's mind was racing. Every comedian's instinct told him to defuse with humor, to make another joke, to laugh his way out of this. But looking into Capone's eyes, seeing the bat in his hands, feeling the weight of genuine danger for the first time in his privileged life, Dean understood that humor wasn't going to save him. Nothing was going to save him. He'd insulted Al Capone in front of a room full of witnesses. He'd made the mobster's greatest insecurity, his most hated feature, into a punchline. And Capone, who'd built his empire on the principle that disrespect must always be answered with violence, was about to teach him a lesson. I didn't mean... Dean stammered. The eloquence, the quick wit, the verbal dexterity that had made his career were gone. He was just Dino Crocetti again, the kid from Steubenville, scared and small in front of a man who could end him with a swing of that bat. Capone set the bat on the stage with a thud that echoed through the silent room. He leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the stage. You didn't mean what, Dean? You didn't mean to disrespect me? You didn't mean to make fun of something I've carried on my face for 40 years? You didn't mean to tell everyone in this room the story of the worst moment of my life, the moment I got these scars, and turn it into a joke. The scars stood out even more under the stage lights. 3 thick lines of damaged tissue that pulled at Capone's face when he spoke. This close, Dean could see the real damage that knife had done, could understand why Capone had been so self-conscious about it all these years. These weren't clean, straight scars. They were jagged, brutal, the kind of scars you get when someone is trying to hurt you, not just mark you. See, Dean, you made a mistake tonight, Capone continued, his voice deadly calm. You thought you could say anything to anyone because you're funny, because you're famous, because people laugh at your jokes. But you forgot something important. You forgot that some of us, we're not here to be your material. We're not here to be laughed at. We're here because we've earned our place through blood and pain and respect. And when you disrespect us, when you make jokes about our pain, you're not being funny. You're declaring war. Lucky Luciano steps in. That's when another voice cut through the tension. Al, hold on. Lucky Luciano had risen from his seat and was walking toward the stage. His approach was different from Capone's. Where Capone had radiated menace, Luciano moved with the confidence of a man who didn't need to threaten. His power was assumed, understood. He was Charles Lucky Luciano, the man who'd helped organize crime in America, who'd survived his own attempted murder and come back to reshape the underworld. Lucky, stay out of this, Capone said without looking at him, his eyes still locked on Dean. Can't do that, Al, Luciano replied, stepping between Capone and the stage. He turned to look at Dean, and there was disappointment in his eyes. Kid, what were you thinking? I mean, really, what the hell were you thinking? Dean opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Mr. Luciano, I was just trying to... You were just trying to be funny, Luciano finished for him. Yeah, I get it. That's your job. That's what you do. But see, there's funny, and then there's stupid. And tonight, you cross that line. He turned back to Capone. Al, I know Dean. Known him for a while. Seen his act in New York. He's a good kid. Talented. But he's also an idiot who doesn't know when to shut up. That's not a defense, Lucky, Capone growled. It's not meant to be, Luciano agreed. It's an explanation. He didn't insult you because he doesn't respect you. He insulted you because he's a moron who thought everyone in this room was here to laugh at his jokes. He didn't understand that some people, some subjects, are off limits. But he understands now. Don't you, Dean? Dean nodded frantically. Yes, Mr. Luciano. I understand. I completely understand. Do you, though? Luciano asked, his voice hardening. Because let me explain something to you. Al Capone is my friend, has been for 30 years. I've seen what he's capable of. I've seen what he does to people who disrespect him. And what you did tonight, making jokes about his scar, about how he got it, about the worst moment of his life. That's not just disrespect. That's a declaration that you don't understand how this world works. That you think your jokes, your career, your laughs are more important than a man's dignity. Luciano moved closer to the stage, close enough that only Dean could hear what he said next. AO's got that bat for a reason, kid. He's used it before. Use it on guys who did a lot less than what you just did. I've seen him cave in skulls with that thing. Seen him break bones. Seen him make men beg for death before he was done with them. And you know what? Those guys, they usually had it coming. They were soldiers who betrayed him, bosses who tried to muscle in on his territory, cops who took his money and then crossed him. But you're just a comedian who thought he could get a laugh. Dean's legs felt weak. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. He could taste copper in his mouth, realize he'd bitten his tongue without noticing. So here's what's going to happen. Luciano continued, loud enough now for everyone to hear. You're going to get off this stage. You're going to walk over to AL's table, and you're going to apologize. Not some half-assed comedian apology where you're really just setting up another joke. A real apology. You're going to tell him you were wrong. You're going to tell him you disrespected him. And you're going to ask him very sincerely to forgive you. And if I do that, Dean's voice was barely above a whisper. Will he forgive me? Luciano turned to look at Capone. The two mobsters locked eyes, having a conversation without words, the kind of communication that comes from decades of working together, surviving together, building an empire together. Finally, Capone gave a slight nod. Maybe, Luciano said, but that's up to Al. All I can promise you is that if you don't do exactly what I just told you, you won't make it out of this club alive. And kid, I ain't exaggerating. I ain't being dramatic. That's just a fact. The apology. Dean Martin stepped off the stage on legs that barely supported him. The walk to Capone's table felt like miles. Every step was agony, not physical but mental, emotional. His entire identity was built on confidence, on fearlessness, on the idea that he could charm anyone. But there was no charming his way out of this. There was only groveling. There was only honesty. There was only admitting that he'd been wrong, arrogant, stupid. The crowd watched in complete silence. 300 people, and you could have heard a pin drop. Some of them were probably enjoying this, enjoying seeing the cocky comedian brought low. Others were just scared, worried about what they were about to witness. But all of them understood they were watching something significant. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was real life, real consequences, real power dynamics playing out in front of them. When Dean reached Capone's table, he stopped. The bat was still on the stage, but Capone's hands were in plain sight now, and Dean could see the scars on his knuckles, the marks of a man who'd done violence with his bare hands when a bat wasn't enough. Capone sat back in his chair, waiting, his face expressionless. Mr. Capone, Dean started, his voice steady despite the fear flooding through him. I owe you an apology. More than an apology. I owe you respect that I failed to give you tonight. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I made jokes about your scar, about how you got it, about something that's personal and painful to you. And I did it for laughs. I did it to entertain people. I did it because I thought I was clever and funny, and that somehow gave me the right to say whatever I wanted about whoever I wanted. Capone's expression didn't change, but he was listening. I was wrong, Dean continued. I was worse than wrong. I was disrespectful. I treated you like you were just material for my act, like your pain and your history and your dignity didn't matter as long as I got my laughs. And that was... He stopped, realizing he needed to find the right word. That was unforgivable. I can't take back what I said. I can't undo the disrespect. All I can do is stand here and tell you that I understand what I did, and I'm sorry. I'm deeply, truly sorry. The silence stretched out. Seconds felt like hours. Dean stood there, waiting for judgment, waiting to find out if his apology was enough or if he just delivered his own eulogy. Finally, Capone spoke. You're right. You can't take it back. Can't undo it. Everyone in this room heard what you said. Heard you make jokes about the worst day of my life. About the moment some punk sliced my face open because I didn't show proper respect to his sister. He leaned forward. You know what the funny thing is, Dean? I learned a lesson that night. Learned that respect matters. That dignity matters. That you can't just say whatever you want and expect no consequences. And tonight, you learned the same lesson. The hard way. Capone stood up, and Dean flinched involuntarily. But the mobster just put his hand on Dean's shoulder. Not gently, but not violently either. A grip that communicated power, but also, maybe, mercy. I accept your apology, Capone said. But understand something. This is a one-time thing. You don't get a second chance with me. You don't get to make this mistake again. If I ever hear that you've made jokes about me, about my scar, about anything related to me or mine, if I ever hear that you've told this story like it's some funny anecdote about the time you pissed off a Capone, there won't be apologies. There won't be lucky Luciano stepping in to save you. There will just be consequences. Do we understand each other? Yes, sir, Dean said. We understand each other completely. Capone released his shoulder and sat back down. He picked up a cigar, took a puff, and waved his hand dismissively. Go finish your show, Dean. But maybe skip the part where you make fun of people's scars. The aftermath. Dean Martin returned to the stage on autopilot. The band, who'd been frozen in place this entire time, started playing again. Dean picked up his microphone. He looked out at the audience, at the sea of faces that had just watched him nearly get killed. And he made a decision. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice finding its strength again. I think I'm going to skip the rest of my jokes and just sing for you. Seems safer. A few nervous laughs. Because tonight, I learned something important. I learned that comedy has limits. That respect matters. That some lines shouldn't be crossed, no matter how big the laugh might be. He nodded to the band, and they started playing Memories Are Made of This. Dean sang, and his voice was different that night. Less cocky, more genuine. He sang like a man who just stared down his own mortality and come out the other side changed. After the show, back in his dressing room, Dean sat with his head in his hands. Lucky Luciano knocked and entered without waiting for permission. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey from Dean's bottle and handed one to the shaken comedian. You're lucky, Luciano said simply. I know, Dean replied. Thank you for stepping in. If I hadn't, you'd be in the Chicago River right now, Luciano finished. Or worse. AL's got creative ways of dealing with disrespect. He sat down across from Dean. You want to know why I helped you? Dean nodded. Because talent shouldn't be wasted, Luciano said. You're talented. Kid. Really talented. You're going to be big someday. Bigger than you are now. But only if you live long enough to get there. And that means learning what I taught you tonight. Know your audience. Know when you're crossing a line. And most importantly, know the difference between making jokes and making enemies. I get it, Dean said. Believe me, I get it. Do you, though? Luciano leaned forward. Because here's what I think. I think you're going to leave here tonight, and in a week, in a month, you're going to start to forget how scared you were. You're going to start thinking maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe you overreacted. Maybe I wouldn't really have hurt you. And then you're going to start telling this story at parties, making it funny, making yourself a hero who stood up to Al Capone. And that's when you're going to get yourself killed. Dean started to protest, but Luciano held up his hand. I'm not saying you'll do it on purpose. I'm saying your ego, your need to be the funny guy, your need to be the fearless guy, it's going to make you stupid again. So, I'm going to give you one piece of advice, and you better take it seriously. Whatever happens in your career, wherever you go, whatever success you find, never forget the feeling you had tonight. Never forget what it felt like to stand at that table and apologize to Al Capone while he decided whether you lived or died. Keep that feeling with you. Let it remind you that there are limits, that there are consequences, that being funny doesn't make you untouchable. Luciano stood up, drained his whiskey, and headed for the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. You've got potential, kid. Don't waste it by being stupid. The world's got enough dead comedians. It could use a few smart ones. The legacy, the story of that night, did spread, though not the way most legends do. It wasn't told in newspapers or magazines. It wasn't broadcast on television or radio. It was whispered in nightclubs and dressing rooms, passed from performer to performer as a cautionary tale. The night Dean Martin made fun of Al Capone's scar and almost didn't live to regret it. For Dean, the incident marked a turning point. He never stopped being funny, never lost his edge or his confidence, but he became more careful about his targets, more aware of the lines he was crossing. When he joined the Rat Pack and became one of the biggest stars in the world, people would sometimes ask him if there was anyone he wouldn't joke about. He'd always smile and give some flip answer, but those who knew him well said the real answer was his eyes. There were limits. There were people you didn't mess with. There were scars you didn't mock. The incident also shaped how Dean treated others. He became known for defending people, for standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Perhaps because he'd learned what it felt like to need someone to step in, to need someone like Lucky Luciano to save him from his own stupidity. He became that person for others. When Sammy Davis Jr. faced racism and hatred, Dean was there. When his friends were attacked or belittled, Dean defended them, not with jokes or humor, but with genuine loyalty and courage. As for Al Capone, he never spoke publicly about that night, but those close to him said it affected him too, in its own way. He'd come close to killing a man over a joke, over wounded pride, over a scar. And while he didn't regret teaching Dean Martin a lesson, he recognized that his reaction said something about him, about the power that scar still held over him decades after the actual wound had healed. The Golden Door nightclub closed a few years later. The building was eventually torn down, replaced by a parking lot, and then a high-rise. But the story of what happened there on March 15th, 1957, lives on, not as entertainment, not as a funny anecdote, but as a reminder that words of power, that dignity matters, and that respect is something you can't take back once you've lost it. Dean Martin went on to have an incredible career. He made movies, recorded albums, had his own television show. He became one of the most beloved entertainers of his generation. But he never forgot the night he stood at Al Capone's table, apologizing for making jokes about a scar, while Lucky Luciano decided whether he deserved to live. In 1995, long after both Capone and Luciano had passed away, Dean gave an interview where he was asked if he had any regrets. He thought for a long moment before answering. "Just one," he said quietly. "One night, I made fun of a man's scar, made it into a joke, and I didn't think about what that scar represented. The pain, the humiliation, the moment in his life that marked him forever. I was young and stupid, and thought being funny gave me the right to say anything, and I almost died for it. So yeah, I regret that. I regret not understanding that comedy should punch up, not down, that humor should illuminate truth, not inflict pain. It took Al Capone and a baseball bat to teach me that lesson. But once you learn it, you never forget it. That scar on Al Capone's face was more than just a mark. It was a lesson, a warning, a reminder that everyone carries their wounds, visible or invisible, and those wounds deserve respect. Dean Martin learned that lesson the hard way, and the fact that he lived to tell about it, even if he rarely did, was a testament to luck, to Lucky Luciano's intervention, and to a mobster's mercy on a night when mercy was the last thing anyone expected. The bat came out in seconds, but the lesson lasted a lifetime.